Hi everyone, I'm Casey. I'm a guide and space holder here to support your growth and empowered healing. For today, I'm so excited to share with you one of my absolute favorite modalities, and also I'm a little excited but also a little nervous because this is my first ever YouTube video. I created this channel because well, as my bio says, I want to be here to support your growth and also your healing. And for this first video, I thought about what to share, and I asked myself, what is my personal go-to practice? And it is, voila, EFT tapping. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and this video is all about introducing you to the modality. And there's so much to share about this wonderful modality. So this is kind of like a brief, but also kind of in-depth introduction that is through my own personal lens, through my own trainings, and also through working with clients, with friends and family, but also most importantly, through my own personal practice and how I work with and interact with this healing modality. So let's get started. So as mentioned, this is my go-to practice, and it has been for many, many years. I first found out about this modality a few years ago through YouTube, actually, through one of those free videos. And then I later worked one-on-one with a coach, and then I went through my own training and also certification and started supporting clients and also people around me with this modality. One of my favorite things about this modality is that it is so powerful when you work with a guide and a practitioner, but it is equally beneficial if you learn the basics of it and begin to tap just on your own. Either way, through the past few years, it has massively supported my own healing and growth journey, and I'm here to share this wonderful modality with you. Okay, so we'll start with some basic overview. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, often also being referred to simply as tapping. It is a wonderful modality that combines Eastern and also Western kind of healing knowledge and wisdom. So from the Western wisdom and knowledge, it is the modality of therapy, more commonly known as talk therapy, when we share our thoughts, our deepest secrets, and we unpack, we organize our thoughts so we have a bit more clarity to move forward and see things as they are for the patterns that they have. And from the Eastern side, it's knowledge and also wisdom. We work a lot with the meridian lines and also the acupressure points. So how it works is very simple. In essence, you're tapping on those acupressure points along the meridian lines, and you're talking and you're speaking the truth of how you feel, and then you're also speaking the truth of how you would like to feel. And that's basically it. There's so much research nowadays to kind of analyze and study how EFT actually work with the body, physical body, but also the energetic and also the emotional, mental level. Essentially, what we're doing is, the science behind it is, as we're tapping on these specific acupressure points, it sends a calming signal to this part of the brain, the small part, almond-shaped part of the brain that's called the amygdala. The amygdala is kind of like our center for fear responses, also our emotions. It doesn't really register or recognize words, so it's more working with our nervous system. So oftentimes when our system recognizes a threat, it sends immediately like a threat signal to the amygdala. And this is when the amygdala could signal the hormones and also the system to go into a sympathetic state, which is more commonly known as the fight, flight, freeze mode. In this state, we might feel anxiety, we might feel panic, we might feel the urge to, as the name suggests, fight, flight, or freeze. And it's not that this response is bad. I think there's a common misconception that our nervous system should only be there to constantly be in calmness and peace and regulation. Well, that's a fun state to be in. We also don't want to always be there, because in this very real 3D reality world, there are going to be moments when there are physical, real dangers and real threats that need to kick us into that sympathetic state in order to survive. So rather than constantly wanting to find calmness and ease and peace, it's more important, in my opinion, to find flexibility between shifting between both states. So coming back to the amygdala, we're not in no way shaming this fear response. Is very much needed. It's just that because this part of the brain doesn't really recognize logic or words, just anytime it perceives whether imaginary or real threat, it puts your whole system into the survival mode, which is not always needed. And nowadays, more and more of us are living kind of in this chronic stress level where the body doesn't recognize the difference between an actual threat, like a tiger chasing us in the woods, versus, let's say, your boss just messaged you about an email that you forgot to send. And when we are tapping, we're essentially sending, again, that calming signal to the amygdala, allowing the amygdala to calm down and to relax. And so we can start to access that parasympathetic state where healing actually happens. So a lot of us nowadays are looking for spaces for healing and also for calm, let's say, sound bath and yoga and all this. The thing is, if there's any part of the body that still recognize or think that you are in a life-threatening situation, your body is so intelligent that it won't allow you to fully rest. And when we're not fully in that relaxed state, healing is not often possible because there's always going to be one part where you're kind of on guard and looking out for danger. So again, when we're working with EFT tapping to essentially bring our body back to that parasympathetic state where sleep, where digest, where reproduction and healing is possible, we're able to explore the deeper parts of us. Which brings me to the benefits of EFT tapping. So a big one is it effectively lowers our stress hormone, our cortisol level, and instantly kind of puts us into that calm state. I personally love working with emotions. That's kind of the main work that I do. And so I love to use EFT tapping to help my clients and also myself to explore some unprocessed emotions. As the creator of the EFT tapping system, Gary Craig says, and I'll quote him on this, "The cause of all negative emotions is from a disruption in the body's energy system." And because we're working so intimately with the meridian lines and also the energy channels, as we're tapping, so energy begins to flow and different parts that's kind of blocked will start to unblock themselves and creating this natural flow of energy, of chi, of life force, of prana. There's so many names to it in our body and in our system. And when our channels are kind of unblocked, this is where the suppressed emotions, the unprocessed things kind of have space to come out for us to explore. Another really cool thing about EFT tapping is how it allows us to access the subconscious and also our belief system. So as many of us know now, 90 to 95% of our daily interactions, choices, and just our reality is actually governed not by our conscious mind, not by what we think, but rather by our unconscious, the subconscious. And in the subconscious, there stores a lot of belief systems and also the emotional attachment to those belief systems because we have millions of thoughts every day, right? And not every thought is our belief, but once we attach an emotional intensity towards certain thoughts, then they become a belief that gets stored in our subconscious. And because the brain is always kind of looking, the ego mind, the brain is always looking to be validated, to be right. And so whatever we have stored in our subconscious as our belief, we start to consciously or unconsciously, most often than not, it's unconscious, start to look for these evidence in our life. Let's say there's a programming since young age that our family keeps telling us that money doesn't grow on trees. Money doesn't grow on trees. Whether or not we're conscious of it when we grow up, maybe consciously we want to make more money, we want to have more ease as we're making money. If we don't recognize that there's a huge subconscious belief underneath, which is money doesn't grow on tree, we have to work harder. Until we recognize that, we are likely going to keep attracting things that prove money doesn't grow on trees. If I want to be wealthy or be financially free or abundant, I need to work harder and harder and harder. And more often than not, these beliefs, they might clash. What we believe subconsciously and consciously. And so EFT tapping, because it allows the body to be in such a calming and relaxed state that we can start to access our deeper layer of our belief to find out, what are some core beliefs of mine and how have they been kind of dictating my life and whether or not I want to keep them in my system and in my field. And if not, then we can also look to EFT tapping or maybe other somatic or energetic tools to start to reprogram and rewire those beliefs. Okay, so earlier I mentioned a key figure of EFT tapping. So his name is Gary Craig. And I would like to share a bit more about the origin story of how EFT came about. Because yes, although Gary did invent and create this modality as what we know now as tapping, it actually goes a little further back. So we'll start with in 1980s. The time famous 1980s, an American psychologist named Roger Callahan actually invented and came up with thought field therapy. And the thought field therapy protocol is very similar to what we know today as EFT tapping. In a moment, I'm going to share the EFT recipe, which is rather simple, but with the thought field therapy, there are actually 200 plus protocols, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, effort, and memorization to kind of start practicing the modality. So in 1990s, then one of his students, Gary Craig, as mentioned, who was a civil engineer, and as all brilliant engineers do, they kind of streamline and simplify things, and that's exactly what he did. He streamlined what was known as thought field therapy with 200 plus protocols into what we know now as the EFT tapping recipe. So the EFT recipe will be the basic protocol of how to practice this modality. Before we even start to tap, we'll often ask the receiver, the person who's tapping, whether that be yourself or someone else, to close down your eyes and just kind of feel into the theme or the issue that is most emotionally charged, right? So maybe that is anger over a certain situation or anxiety, whatever that is. Feel into the intensity of that issue or that theme, and then rate that on a scale of 1 to 10. And this would be completely up to you. Maybe 10 is the most intense, maybe 1 is the most intense. And after that, we'll go straight into the tapping, and we'll always start by the side of the hand. In a moment, I will share all the tapping points, but just so you know, we'll always start here. Oftentimes, to begin, I'll have my clients kind of repeat after me and speak directly to the truth of how we feel. And for some, maybe it could be quite uncomfortable, let's say, especially with things that maybe would carry shame or guilt. But it's very important because as we repeat the truth of how we feel, as we're tapping, we're actually sending that calming signal to the body. So the body initially might recognize this as a threat, like, oh my gosh, my secrets are getting out. But as you're tapping, the more you're tapping and speaking the truth of how we feel, you'll find that it actually discharges that emotion at its peak intensity. And when that specific emotion kind of loses its charge a little bit, this is when we go into a reframing. Personally, I love to guide my clients into bringing a bit more compassion and also understanding for themselves, or maybe the situation, with words like, if this makes sense, or I understand why I feel this way, or it is okay that I feel this way. And then after that, I'll guide them into a shifting of perspective. Let's say they were feeling really upset and really sad about a situation, and then they go through a few rounds of, oh, I'm so upset over the situation, I'm so upset. When I can sense that there's a shift in energy with that statement, I'll guide them into, okay, it makes sense that I'm so upset. And then after that, I'll guide them into reframing. So and maybe it doesn't have to be this upsetting. Maybe I could see this as an opportunity, or whatever it is. So what I find also with tapping is that different voices, I'll call them intuition, will kind of come up and draw either yourself or your clients or people that you're tapping with into the direction that their soul is actually guiding them toward. And so just follow that intuition, follow those nudges, those messages that's popping up in your head, and go into a reframing of perspective in that way. And then after that, I always love to, end on a positive note, just to kind of hone in on whatever perspective shift there were, and just repeat that a couple of times until you feel again an energy shift, maybe a raising in vibration and frequency, which you could viscerally feel. And then I'll come to an end with the tapping practice or the tapping round. So now let's get into the tapping points. So as mentioned, the first, we'll start with this karate chop point, as some may call, side of the hand. It does not matter which hand. And then the second point would be the top of the head. I like to make a little claw here and just top either specifically one spot or kind of make a circle around the head. And then the third point would be the beginning of the eyebrow point. And again, you can use either side, or some people like to tap with both hands. And then the side of the eye where that little bone is. And then under the eye on the cheekbone. Under the nose. Under the mouth on the chin. And then here I like to use both hands. That would be right underneath the collarbones. and then use both hands right underneath the rib cage. I'm not sure if you can see here. So rib cage right underneath. And then one side, either side, underneath the armpit. And then on the wrist, on top of the wrist. And then we'll repeat. And instead of repeating from the karate chop point, we'll repeat from the top of the head. And you just keep going however many rounds you feel called to do this tapping. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything you need to know about EFT for now. I'd like to give you some extra tips, especially if you're just starting out with this practice. The first one would be feel free to change up the wording so that whatever you say fit exactly to how you feel and also the situation or the scenario that you're in. And then the second would be just to allow the energy to move. So oftentimes as you're tapping, especially if it's on, a specific topic that's very emotionally heavy, we'll feel those energy kind of being processed and moved through. And some people would burp, might yawn, crying, laughing, even farting. All these are just indicators that energy is moving in your system, which is a great thing. The third would be, as I mentioned earlier as well, what I find is as we're tapping, because the body feels so safe, it might access, certain not just subconscious beliefs, but also memories that were kind of buried under from childhood, or some clients of mine have accessed past lives or other timelines, or even certain ancestral patterns that have been kind of held on through generations and generations that no one seemed to have recognized. As we're tapping, this modality is intelligent in that way that it's almost like your system feels safe enough to open yourself up to kind of like a greater power, divine source, or intuition, universe, God's love, whatever you want to call it. And I love to invite my clients to just simply allow it. And if you're tapping with a practitioner, feel free to, if you need to, even pause and just let them know whatever is coming through, or afterwards. It'll always be helpful if you just share whatever is coming into your field. Last but not least is to be as honest as you can with your own practice. And I know that especially when we're tapping on emotionally heavy themes and topics, it could be kind of our system's way of protecting us to not go so deep, not go so far, which is completely understandable, and that's totally fine. What you'll find is with EFT, because it's such a gentle healing technique, it really allows you to go at your own pace. I would invite you to set the intention for yourself to, okay, I am courageous and brave enough. Now that I'm sitting with this modality, I will be as honest as possible with myself, so to maximize my healing and also my growth. Because at the end of the day, this is a practice that is between you and you. No one is forcing you into this. And I trust that if you have stumbled upon this video or this modality, there is a part of you that deeply desire the freedom that is on the other side of, holding on to certain things that no longer serve you. And so even though it is daunting and scary, especially for the ego mind, when we're in survival mode and there's so many walls of protections around us, I invite you to surrender yourself a little bit more into the modality, into the love of the universe, to help you move past whatever you're meant to move past at any given moment. All right, so this video was a little bit longer than I expected, but I hope you got out of this video everything you need to know to get you started on your tapping journey. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below. It feels so weird saying that since this is my first video, but yeah, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll answer. If you desire to go a little bit deeper, work with a practitioner, I offer one-on-one spaces, which I'll also link in the description box. And personally, I started my tapping journey here on YouTube with a bunch of free resources. One of my favorites is Yates. I'll also link his YouTube channel in the description if you want to check that out. And if you found this video helpful, feel free to drop me a comment. I really appreciate that and all of your feedbacks. And also, follow for more tapping videos, and I intend to use this channel as a platform to support your growth and also your healing in however way I feel most called to. I'm so happy that you're here, and till next time.